Hello and welcome. I'm Leigh Ann Gerrans and you're watching W News, broadcasting live from the Al Arabiya headquarters. These are our top stories. US President Donald Trump signs a series of executive orders revoking many of the Biden-era policies. At least 66 people are dead after a fire tears through a ski resort in northwest Turkey. A deal could be struck between the US and China regarding the sale of TikTok in exchange for softer tariffs. And Zelensky mixes with the world's rich and powerful at the Davos summit as he seeks further support for Ukraine. US President Donald Trump has signed multiple executive orders setting out plans for his next 4 years in office. These new directives, many of them overturning Joe Biden's own orders, carry the weight of the law. But some are already facing legal challenges, as Nick Harper reports from Washington.
So we're going to sign executive orders first.
The businessman means business. Within hours of retaking office, US President Donald Trump signed dozens of executive orders. Some in a sports arena, watched by 20,000 of his supporters. First up, declaring a national emergency at the US-Mexico border. That frees up funding to increase security to prevent what he says is an invasion of illegal immigrants that threatens US sovereignty.
Today I will also declare a national energy emergency. We will drill, baby, drill.
The president wants to ramp up domestic energy production with more oil and gas drilling. For TikTok, officially banned in the US, he signed a 75-day reprieve, while a deal is done over the ownership of the Chinese app.
I think February 1st.
Not signed on Monday, but expected, are tariffs, with a threatened 25% import duty on with goods from Canada and Mexico now scheduled to start in less than 2 weeks. But already there are legal challenges against some of his actions. His plan to end birthright citizenship, a constitutional right, faces a lawsuit, with migrants claiming the president has no authority to redefine American citizenship. Well, there are already 3 lawsuits against his newly created Department of Government Efficiency, headed up by Elon Musk. The suit accuses the department of violating transparency laws. Some of the orders could now be bogged down in the courts for months to come, putting the brakes on the president's plan of full speed ahead. Nick Harper, Al Arabiya News, Washington.
Let's get more on those executive orders, specifically the January the 6th pardons, with our correspondent in Washington, Caroline Malone. Caroline, the January the 6th riots took place in the very same venue as the president's inauguration yesterday. And today, Donald Trump has pardoned the group he calls the J6 hostages. Now, who does that include?
That's right. So President Trump has essentially given clemency or even full pardons to around 1,500 people that were involved in the Capitol riots of January 6, 2021. That was the day in which people were listening to the then President Trump, who had lost the election. They were listening and believed him when they said that there was a miscarriage of justice. They marched down to actual Congress and some of them stormed in. Trespassing, violence was carried out against, in particular, police officers. And they were trying to essentially go into the inner chambers where the election results were officially being marked. Now, those people are essentially being let out of jail because of these pardons. Most of them were at sort of lower level sentencing. They were involved with the actual trespassing. They were involved with the protests. They were involved with damaging property. A higher level tier of people involved and charged carrying out actual violence. And those are some of the people that were involved, for instance, in injuring police officers, some of whom were badly injured. About 140 were badly injured that day. About 5 people ended up dying as a result of the attack. One of them was a police officer. And then you have this sort of most serious tier of person that has been given clemency, and these are the people who were charged and found guilty of plotting the attack. So seditious conspiracy was one of the charges laid against the former Proud Boys leader, who is now, according to family members, being released on Tuesday because he hasn't had a pardon, but he has had clemency, meaning that he'll serve no more jail time. Also, the Oath Keepers leader, who was also charged with stockpiling weapons and also planning this attack on Congress.
The majority of rioters pleaded guilty in court. What will happen to the ongoing court cases currently being investigated by the Department of Justice?
So most of the cases actually have wrapped, but for those that are pending, as part of this executive order, President Trump is asking federal agencies to get the Department of Justice to stop federal agencies from continuing those investigations. And essentially what that means is there will be no new people who are investigated and charged over the January 6th Capitol attack. As well as these pardons, we can expect that no more court cases will be going through federal courts in order to charge anyone new related to these days' incidents. I mean, from President Donald Trump's perspective, you know, he has basically called it a grave national injustice that these people were even put in prison in the first place. Clearly very differing views from other people, especially those lawmakers that were involved and inside the chambers at the time of the attack. Among those, people like Senate Democratic leader Chuck Schumer, who said that Donald Trump is ushering in a golden age for people that break the law and attempt to overthrow the government. So really, you know, a damning statement there from the people who really see this as clearly a bad decision to let all these 1,500 people out of jail.
You just touched on how the lawmakers are responding to this, but the January the 6th riots became one of the biggest criminal investigations in US history after Donald Trump's 2020 election defeat. You did mention around 140 police officers were injured and 5 died as a result. How are the police responding to this news?
So a number of former Capitol Police officers have come out with statements, and some of them spoke even before President Trump was back in office, as he is now today on Tuesday, because there was this suggestion from President-elect Trump that he would carry out these pardons. And in particular, I'll read to you a statement from former officer Harry Dunn, who has called this another dark day in American history and a continuation of the stain that January 6th has left on our nation. We've also heard from Alekino Gonel, who is another former Capitol Police officer, who's spoken to media and called this a betrayal. You know, from his perspective, President Trump is someone that's spoken out to support the police, who seems to be someone that gives backing to federal law enforcement agencies and supports anyone that are in a security position. But what you're seeing now is that clearly President Trump is acting in another way, instead helping to forgive the people that carried out the violence, even though that violence was carried out in some instances against Capitol Police officers.
Caroline Malone in Washington, thank you so much for joining me. As well as the January the 6th pardons, President Trump has announced he will be taking America out of the Paris Climate Agreement again and withdrawing from the World Health Organization. Trump has always been against the climate treaty, which he withdrew from during his first presidency, and has been heavily critical of the health agency run by the United Nations. Let's speak to Sara Firth, a foreign correspondent based in Washington for us right now. Sara, thank you for joining me. This isn't entirely a surprise announcement from Trump. He's been very open when it comes to his opinions on both of these things. But how exactly will it work? And when will we see the exit take place?
You're absolutely right. There were no surprises there, but a lot of disappointment, a lot of concern amongst some Americans at what we've already seen President Trump do in his first hours after he was sworn in as the 47th President of the United States of America, signing those executive orders, as you said, taking America out of the Paris Climate Agreement and the World Health Organization. But look, how is this actually going to work in practice? He's signed the executive orders. He's signaled his feelings, which he says is that here, America is being ripped off in these deals. But there is a process here that will need to be followed. It's going to need approval from Congress when it comes to exiting the World Health Organization. There'll be a huge amount, of course, of bureaucracy around how you even implement something like that. There are so many deals that are involved. There are so many partnerships that are involved when it comes to the healthcare system. When it comes to the Paris Climate Agreement, well, as well as making America great again, as he's promised, he's taking them out of the climate agreement again. Now, the last time you have that 1-year withdrawal process, and so it didn't complete in time. You had the Biden administration coming in and reversing all of that. So once again, we've seen President Trump recommitting to this, and this time it seems he's very adamant this is going to go ahead and this is going to happen.
As you mentioned, this is the second time Trump has pulled out of the Paris Climate Agreement. It was later reversed by Joe Biden, as you just mentioned. But America is one of the world's biggest polluters. And also, Sarah, we recently saw those devastating effects of the wildfires in Los Angeles. How has this decision actually gone down stateside?
Well, look, I mean, it's coming at a time, as you said, of these devastating LA wildfires, and also when you've had one of the hottest years on record. So this is seen by people in America who are concerned about the climate, concerned about what's happening, particularly in LA. As a very aggressive rolling back of America's climate policy. I've been reporting and speaking to people in the LA area affected by those LA fires. You know, people have been saying for years they were hoping that more would be done in California, but there's just huge concern, not just at the rebuild that's going to happen, but that now, as well as that, you've got, as I said, what's seen as this rolling back of help in this area. Donald Trump has been very clear, though, that he views this deal as a bad deal. He's been here before. We know what his feelings about it is. The big question, though, amongst many in America, particularly those impacted by the state of the climate, is going to be what fills the gap and what the new policies of the administration will be.
So let's go to the World Health Organization. America contributes around $1.2 billion to the WHO, the biggest sponsor of the organization. Surely this is a devastating blow to them. Have we heard from them? What's their response been?
You have, yes, as one of the biggest donors, the biggest donor to the World Health Organization. It's a massive blow for them. They've responded saying they're disappointed. They've expressed their disappointment, and they're hoping that the United States and President Trump will reconsider. What they're calling for is dialogue. Now, are we going to get it? As I mentioned, you've got a lot of partnerships that are taking place when it comes to American healthcare, when it comes to things like vaccines. It is a major undertaking to even think about America withdrawing from the World Health Organization and what that will actually look like in practice. But, you know, President Trump, he's already started this process. As we said, there's bureaucracy. It needs approval from Congress. He's there in the White House. We've seen him signing those orders, taking his place back where he's been before. But there is a long road ahead when it comes to whether in practice, this is going to be something that could be enacted. It will certainly be a long road ahead. But look, it really signals the fact that President Trump being back in power now, it's not just impacting what happens here in America and Americans and American healthcare. Such a blow to the World Health Organization. And this is a return to power, Trump's return to the White House, that is being felt around the world already.
Yes, indeed. Sara Firth, thank you so much. A foreign correspondent over in Washington. Thank you. Now, staying with President Trump, who said that tariffs on China could hinge on a deal over TikTok's ownership as he signed an executive order to keep the popular short-form video platform online in the US for 75 days. The order instructs the Attorney General not to take any action to enforce the law so that his administration has an opportunity to determine the appropriate course forward. Laura Westbrook has more on this.
As Donald Trump signs the executive order postponing a deadline requiring TikTok's parent company ByteDance, which is from China, to sell its stake or face a ban in the US, he told reporters that the US should be entitled to get half of TikTok if a deal for the app is reached. He also said he could certainly put tariffs on China if it rejected a deal, which he said would be a hostile act. And those tariffs could be as high as 100%. Now, the legality of Trump's executive order remains unclear, with the law having been signed by President Biden and upheld by the Supreme Court. We have heard some reaction from Beijing, with China's foreign ministry saying on Tuesday that companies should decide about their operations and deals when asked about Trump's vision for the future of TikTok. It also said that the US should earnestly listen to the voice of reason. On the social media site Weibo, users reacted to Trump's comments, some with disdain. One user saying that American companies like Apple and Tesla should also give up 50% of their shares to Chinese companies. Now, Trump campaigned on a promise to implement 60% tariffs on all goods imported from China. He also vowed to impose an additional 10% tariff on Chinese goods unless Beijing does more to stop the flow of the drug fentanyl. And despite that tough talk on the campaign trail, on day one, Trump did not immediately enact those sweeping tariffs. The move to hold off on tariffs against China does appear to offer a bargaining chip for a TikTok deal. Both the US and China have signaled interest in dialogue. On Friday, Trump spoke to Chinese President Xi Jinping, where he said he raised the TikTok issue. He's also said he could travel to China as soon as this year. President Xi Jinping also took the rare step in sending a senior Beijing official, Vice President Han Zheng, to the inauguration. TikTok was temporarily unavailable to some of its 170 million American users on Saturday, following the initial deadline under the divest or ban law, but resumed hours later. We've also seen this charm offensive from TikTok CEO Xiaozi Chu, who attended the inauguration alongside other tech billionaires such as Mark Zuckerberg. Now, TikTok is owned by ByteDance, which is from China, and there are concerns in the US that TikTok's ownership makes it subservient to Beijing. TikTok executives have denied sharing any data with Beijing.
Laura Westbrook in Hong Kong, thank you. Now, 66 people are dead and 51 injured after a fire ripped through a hotel in Turkey's Bolu Mountains earlier today. The blaze broke out overnight at the Grand Kartal Hotel in the popular ski resort of Kartal Kaya at around 3:30 a.m. 4 people have been arrested. We can now speak to a Turkish journalist, Umat Sevdi Tangor. Umat, thank you so much for joining me. Firstly, a devastating incident. Do we know how this fire started?
Thank you very much, Leigh Ann. It's a really devastating time for Turkey. And also, I would like to say that it's just a couple of minutes ago, President Recep Tayyip Erdogan announced that one day mourning for Turkey public for tomorrow. According to Interior Minister of Turkey, a fire broke out at a hotel which at the peak of the Karol Mountains around 3:30 a.m. And the fire started at the restaurant section section, according to initial report, which is on the 4th floor, and there's no certain reason right now explained to the public. And the hotel itself already 12-story building and half concrete and half wooden. What it means actually, that is wooden coating on the concrete with 140 guest rooms hotel. Most of the people who are expert on this fires, they are saying one of the reasons that fire goes quickly and cover all the building because of this wood coating on the concrete. Emergency service and the big numbers of firefighters and the medical teams were dispatched to the area immediately after the fire. But having said that, please bear in mind that the mountain is 3:30 a.m. is full of snow and the road is very icy. So it was not easy for all those rescue teams to arrive as quickly as possible. Therefore, it was not a quick dispatch for the people.
Difficult rescue operation underway, as you say. You mentioned how many people were staying at the hotel. Is this a particularly busy time of year with the ski season?
Yes, exactly, Lee, because it's a holiday right now for the whole schools. Also universities. The hotel therefore was full of guests because of the midterm holiday, and 234 guests, as we know, and according to the list there are same surnames. What it means actually, children, fathers and mothers were staying together, and as you said on your report, is 66 people lost their life and 51 were injured, and they are in very intense. They are in the still intensive care, and they are still in the serious condition, and 17 people have been discharged from the hospitals.
You mentioned there that there will be a day of mourning tomorrow, but what are authorities saying about what's happened?
Well, Justice Minister Yilmaz Tunç announced that 4 people, including the business owner, the owner of the hotel, were detained. And as I mentioned, there are some allegations that hotel doesn't have fire escape stairs. The Turkey Minister of Culture and Tourism, he stated that the hotel was inspected in 2001 and until the 2024, and that has fire qualification license. Tourism Minister also stated that regular checks should be carried out, and also they did until 2024, and until now no negative situation has been observed. However, I would like to add on this, the Chamber of Engineers and Architects of Turkey, who are non-governmental expert organization, they made a written statement and they said they should be in the capacity in the hotel, automatic sprinkle system, so automatic watering system. Unfortunately, the initial reports say, and the photos and the videos of the hotels on the website is showing that the automatic sprinkle system that was supposed to be installed in 2008, according to the law, not installed. So because of this system not installed, the fire spread quickly and the casualties were more.
Turkish journalist Umat Sevdi Tangor in Istanbul. Thank you so much for joining me this evening.
Thank you, Lee.
Let's take a look at some of the other stories making headlines today. Israel's military chief of staff, Lieutenant Herzi Halev, has said he will resign in March over the failure to prevent the October the 7th attack by Hamas. His resignation marks the highest profile departure of an Israeli official linked to the security establishment's failures, which led to the deaths of around 1,200 people. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has declined to take responsibility for those mistakes, stating that that accountability will come, but only after the war. US President Donald Trump has revoked sanctions on far-right Israeli settlers imposed by the Biden administration. The groups and individuals are accused of violence against Palestinians in the occupied West Bank. Trump does not align with the long-held US position that settlements are illegal. The Taliban has released 2 American prisoners in exchange for an Afghan fighter. The deal was brokered by Qatar and announced during Donald Trump's inauguration ceremony. 2 other American citizens do remain in detention in Afghanistan. Britain faces a new type of terrorism, according to Prime Minister Keir Starmer. The UK leader was speaking in a reference to the Southport attack last July, where 3 young girls were killed. A British teenager has pleaded guilty to the murders that led to days of riots across the nation. The Prime Minister said the law may need to recognise new and dangerous threats. And Prince Harry and the publisher of The Sun newspaper are very close in negotiations over a potential settlement. The Duke of Sussex claims he was unlawfully targeted by journalists and private investigators who were working for the parent company News Group newspapers. A trial had been due to start at London's High Court today, but it has been delayed. Now, Volodymyr Zelensky has addressed world leaders and financiers at the World Economic Forum summit in Davos today. During his speech, the Ukrainian president compared Russia to North Korea and called on supporters to continue aiding his country against Putin. Zelensky will be hoping that Trump lives up to his pledge as peacemaker, ending the war in Ukraine following the Gaza ceasefire.
Well, thank you very much.
Let's go live to Kyiv now to speak to our correspondent, Ross Cullen. Ross, evening to you. Tell us what else Zelensky had to say at the Davos summit today.
Well, good evening, Leigh Ann. Volodymyr Zelensky spoke at length about Europe, saying there must be more investment in the defence sector in Europe because Russia is investing in its military-industrial complex, so Europe needs to ramp up production here. Europe also needs to be strong, he said, not relegated to a second or third-rate player in the international influence battle. Europe needs to speak up for itself and defend itself. Also something that was interesting in terms of the Middle East, Volodymyr Zelensky said that, quote, Vladimir Putin's strategy is to drag other countries into the war. He's dragged in North Korea, as you mentioned in the introduction. Volodymyr Zelensky saying that Ukraine's estimate is that some 4,000 North Korean soldiers have died so far. They've mostly been deployed by Russia inside Russia in the Kursk region, of which Ukraine has seized territory. But Volodymyr Zelensky also spoke about Iran being dragged into the war, particularly with the supply by Iran of Shahad drones to Russia, which are deployed by Moscow. And in fact, about an hour ago, there was an air raid siren here in Kyiv. We got the all clear just before we came on air, but it just shows that there are daily air attacks and the threat of air attacks all across Ukrainian territory. He said that Iran's influence is in fact reducing with the fall of Bashar al-Assad, but Ukraine is trying to increase its influence in the Middle East. It is sending food donations to Syria and has also recently sent a ministerial delegation to Damascus.
During his first speech as president, Donald Trump implored Putin to make a deal with Ukraine, saying he was destroying Russia. How has this message actually gone down where you are in Kyiv?
Well, Volodymyr Zelensky did say that he has very good relations with Donald Trump, but he says we need to wait a little bit longer to understand more of his plans in detail. But in terms of here inside Ukraine, one of the leading MPs, Yeho Chernev, spoke today saying that all leaders, when they win elections, get grace periods, get honeymoon periods, perhaps 100 days or so, when there is goodwill towards that leader. Donald Trump is no different, but there will come a time, according to this Ukrainian MP, when results will have to start to be delivered. bothered. He's made a lot of promises, particularly in his inauguration speech, and the American people and Donald Trump himself will want to start to see results. So there should be some progress, he was hoping, on possible peace negotiations in the coming months. Yehel Chernev also did say that 2025 is going to be a crucial year for Russia because of the dismal state of its economy and the threat perhaps that the United States maintains or even expands its economic sanctions on Russia, perhaps as a tactic to try to apply pressure to Vladimir Putin.
Ross, it's Trump's second day in office. He previously said he would end the war in the first 24 hours. But you did mention earlier that there have been missiles traded back and forth throughout today. Do you think we'll see Trump or his peace envoy making a visit to Kyiv anytime soon?
Yeah, that 24-hour timeline has certainly been pushed, Leigh Ann. They're now talking about months, the Trump administration, now that that is up and running. Keith Kellogg is the United States Special Envoy to Russia and Ukraine, and he actually had hinted that he would try to make a trip here to Ukraine before the inauguration. Now, that didn't happen, but we are watching for if that visit will be confirmed by him or by the new US Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. Now, something else to watch for is that Donald Trump has said that despite the fact that he believes that Vladimir Putin is destroying Russia for failing to reach a peace deal, Donald Trump does still want to have a phone call with Vladimir Putin before Mr. Trump announces any possible measures to try to bring the conflict to a close. And, Leigh Ann, we believe that that phone call, if it does go ahead, will be another way that both sides in Washington and Moscow can try to lay the groundwork for a possible in-person meeting between the two presidents. So we are watching for that phone call and the possible outcome of that, and also for the first visit to Ukraine by Keith Kellogg and or Marco Rubio.
Ross Cullen in Kyiv, thank you so much for joining me this evening. Earlier today, South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol attended a constitutional court hearing of his impeachment for the first time. Yoon was arrested last week over his attempt to impose martial law in the country in December. Rebecca Bundhan reports.
South Korea's impeached President Yoon told the court that he would answer any questions that they had. On Tuesday in court, Yoon said that he did not order military commanders to drag lawmakers from parliament as he attempted to impose martial law last month. This was a move that shocked South Korea and pushed the country into political turmoil over the past few weeks. Lawmakers voted to impeach Yoon and he was suspended from office, but this is a decision that would have to be upheld by the Constitutional Court to have him permanently removed from office. Yoon's lawyers said that he had tried to impose martial law because of abuses that had been committed by the opposition. Yoon has been in custody since his arrest last week over separate criminal charges of leading an insurrection. Yoon is the first sitting president in South Korea to be arrested. The Constitutional Court has up to 180 days to decide whether Yoon should be permanently removed from office or if he should be reinstated.
Rebecca Bundhan in Tokyo, thank you so much. Let's take a look at the top business news. The dollar has rebounded sharply today after plunging hours earlier. That's as Donald Trump's first day back as US President brought mixed messaging on tariffs and highlighted investors' sensitivities to headlines about trade policy. US futures rose after bouncing around yesterday as traders digested Trump's statements on economic policy and trade taxes. Britain's Chancellor Rachel Reeves will urge company bosses at the World Economic Forum meeting in Davos to invest in the UK. Her office says she will emphasise the country's political and economic stability and pro-business government. Reeves, who will be accompanied by Business Minister Jonathan Reynolds, will also highlight recent efforts to slash regulation in meetings with various business leaders, including JP Morgan's Jamie Dimon. Turning to sports news now, and Novak Djokovic has beaten Carlos Alcaraz to reach the Australian Open semi-final. The Serb looked in serious trouble at the end of his first set as he moved gingerly around the court, but he fought back magnificently. Djokovic will face Germany's Alexander Zverev next. And Haas Automotion has appointed Laura Muller as the first female race engineer in Formula One. Muller will work with new signing Esteban Ocon as one of the two new race engineers at the US-based team. The new head of strategy at Haas will also be a woman, Karen Cridledge, who was recruited from Red Bull's Racing Bulls team and will start work at the beginning of March. A reminder of our top stories. US President Donald Trump signs a series of executive orders revoking many of the Biden-era policies. At least 66 people are dead after a fire tears through a ski resort in northwest Turkey. A deal could be struck between the US and China regarding the sale of TikTok in exchange for softer tariffs. And Zelensky mixes with the world's rich and powerful at the Davos summit as he seeks further support for Ukraine. And that's all from us on W News. Thank you for joining us. Hadley Gamble's special interview with the Saudi Arabian Minister of Economy and Planning is coming up next. And don't miss Tom Burgess-Watson with GNT. Good night.